were going to be empty or already were empty. The houses were swept completely off their foundations and turned into matchsticks. Next. The other half we could save. They were structurally fine. They had to be gutted down to the structure and completely rebuilt. But their structure was fine, so it helped out a lot in getting a lot of folks back home a lot faster than folks we had to build a brand new house for. Next. So the neighborhood looked like this for a real long time, and I think down in South Florida you guys are familiar with the FEMA trailer there in the background. And we'll talk about that. The FEMA trailer is probably public enemy number one in the indoor air quality issue. Because what happens is when they start building these sort of things, especially a travel trailer, travel trailers weren't meant to live in for a really long time, like 3 years. But they were a quick fix, and there was nothing that came after them. Travel trailers are usually meant to live in for a few days, but when you're in those things for an extended period of time with very little air ventilation, and the materials that they use in there begin to off-gas and release chemicals from the chemicals they used to make them, it started making everybody sick. Everybody sick. Everybody was getting asthma or some sort of congestion in their lungs and other things, and it really was an awful thing, and I think it really made us even more sensitive to the fact that when we start building these new homes, we have to be careful not to use the same kind of materials that they use in the trailers as best we can, and make sure that we have great ventilation and whatnot. Next slide. So this is how most people live for a really long time. Next. One of the other things that came up was because of the storm surge, FEMA decided to raise the floodplain from what it was in what they said in 1984 to a new flood elevation. All of that stuff you see in blue is the original floodplain, and everything else that you see in the green is the new floodplain. So you can see a great part of that neighborhood was never in the floodplain. And what that means is now that we have to, when we build new houses, they have to be elevated above that. In some places, sometimes 10 feet higher than what they originally needed to be elevated to. So that added another wrinkle to the problem that we had to deal with of just rebuilding and rebuilding strong. Now we have to rebuild strong 12 feet in the air. Next. So for Architecture for Humanity, we developed, along with 6 architecture firms around the country, 7 buildings to address elevation, affordability, sustainability, and everything else that we could fit in to the budget of about $115,000 to $150,000. Our goal was $115,000, but we soon realized that was going to be very challenging to reach. These are 3 homes that we built over the last 2.5 years. The home on the top was the first home completed in 2007. The home on the left was completed in 2008, and the home on the right bottom is just about complete. The homeowner should be moving in the next week or so. Once that pretty much wrapped up, I began working for the, go ahead, that's fine, Grace. Began working for the Gulf Coast Community Design Studio. And that's an outreach program of Mississippi State University's School of Architecture. And we have done, and really not me, but the design studio has done the lion's share of the design work in that neighborhood. We've expanded. We now have offices in all 3 coastal counties. And these are two buildings that I really appreciate. The building on the left is for the Trans, Mr. and Mrs. Tran, who are standing there in the foreground. You see their little Katrina Cottage next to their building. You see how high their building is up. That building, I think, is somewhere around 10 or 12 feet up in the air. And a very unique design, and really the clients are involved in the design process, and I think it's really important that they are. And I think that's something to think about in your designs, and understand that the end user is so important to be involved, or at least to be thought of during your design process if you can't involve them from the beginning. The house on the right is Ernest Parker's home. That's Ernest in the front. We built that house in 10 days. It was a blitz build, and I think it's one of the best designs for a two-bedroom house that we have. It's really a phenomenal building. Neither one of these buildings I had very much to do with, but I think they show what the kind of work that we do in the design studio. Next. One of the other things that I also do with Mississippi State is I help teach a group of students every spring. We have come down. They live down here. This year the students are living in the Salvation Army volunteer camp, and they are building this house right here. This is a rendering. And this is a home for Mary Pat and Tony Forrest. Their home was destroyed in the storm surge, and after weighing all their options, they've decided to rebuild the home. And this is the rendering of the home. Next. Now, Grace, if you double-click, or just double-click on the screen right there, we'll start a time lapse of that photo. Oops, back up. One more. To the black screen, and you should click on the screen itself, and it should start the time lapse movie.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Are you using the mouse?
Yeah, I'm using the mouse.
Huh.
Down here?
Okay. Maybe, I don't know. It was working, but that's okay. Let's press on. Sorry, Micah, if you're watching. Micah's one of my students who put that together. Anyway, so that's the kind of work that I do with Mississippi State. The students design the house, and with the client, and they've been building it for the last 2 months. It is dried in. All the windows are going to be in by today, I hope, and the roof is on. And so now we can start to focus on the inside. We have some of the electricity done, and the students kind of get this hands-on experience. And I get to stay out of the office for 2 months, so it works out for everybody. Go ahead and go to that postcard slide, Grace. We'll keep pressing on. I don't want to waste any more time with my work. I want to get down to the important stuff. So this is a slide of an old school in Waveland, Mississippi, near where I live in Bay St. Louis. And this this postcard is, I think, from the 20s or 30s. The building was built around the turn of the century or in the teens. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see it was destroyed in Hurricane Katrina, in part because they put a roof on the building. And they didn't realize, by putting a roof on the building, that the winds in the storm like that and the water would have an adverse effect on the load-bearing walls, which were just 2 bricks thick. But an architecture group that I work for, Unabridged Architecture, took on the task to restore this building, and it took us about a year to do it, or a little more than a year. And if you go to the next slide, this is one of the slides. I don't have all the pretty ones, but that's that corner right there. And you can see it's been completely rebuilt and restored to the original look of the building. We've had to add some ramps and things for accessibility, but the building has really come out great, and we're really happy with it. Next. And this is another building that I'm building with them or working with them.